My Age of Anxiety. Discover the story of Scott Stossel's lifelong struggle with anxiety disorder and learn how to approach the world's most widespread mental health issue. You'll understand why we are more anxious than ever. Explore the factors contributing to the modern epidemic of anxiety, where phobias come from. Gain insight into the origins and development of specific fears. If medication can save us, evaluate the effectiveness and limitations of pharmaceutical interventions. How evolution made us anxious. Understand the evolutionary basis of anxiety and its role in survival. Focus points. Scott has a problem. Delve into Scott Stossel's personal journey with anxiety. How anxious is our world now? Examine the current state of anxiety in society. A struggle to define anxiety. Understand the complexities of defining and diagnosing anxiety. Facing our fears. Learn strategies for confronting and managing anxiety. Can pills save us? Assess the role of medication in treating anxiety. Genes versus us. Explore the interplay between genetic predisposition and personal agency. Focus point 1. Scott has a problem. All is well in Scott's life. A happily married father of 2. He's running a successful magazine and writing his first major book. But beneath this accomplished appearance, he's falling apart. He has felt this way since he was 2 years old. That's when a sense of crippling anxiety broke into his life and never left. There's a difference between occasionally feeling anxious and a fully fledged anxiety disorder. It caused him to walk out of dates and exams or break down during job interviews and flights. This sense overwhelmed him at the altar, during the birth of his first child, and even while casually walking down the street. Scott's anxiety is not simply a problem, it's a full-on disaster. And on top of his anxiety disorder, there's more. Constant stomach issues and headaches, phobias of heights, germs, cheese, flying, and even vomiting. In over 40 years of suffering from anxiety disorder, he has tried it all. He's searched for a cure in between decades of psychotherapy and hypnosis, meditation, and countless pills. Scott combines centuries of scientific research and his own experience in his book. He asks, what is anxiety? And why is our century so overwhelmed with it? Get ready to solve the riddle of anxiety together. Focus point 2. How anxious is our world now? Let's state it loud and clear. The 21st century is incredibly anxious. And it's not just an unreasonable feeling we all have. Research backs it up. As of now, anxiety disorder is the most widespread mental health issue on our planet, outrunning depression. About 40 million Americans, nearly 1 in 7, grapple with some form. Anxiety eats up about a third of the mental health care budget in the U.S., while companies lose billions due to their employees feeling more anxious than ever before. Yet, until recently, anxiety was not even a recognized clinical category. Anxiety research started back in the 1980s when neuroscientists discovered the amygdala, a tiny brain part responsible for processing our most fearful emotions and behaviors. However, we can't blame this organ for spreading anxiety throughout humanity. The truth is that the way we live has hugely contributed to the rise of anxiety in recent decades. Embracing moderate anxiety can enhance performance and creativity. Let's revisit medieval times when our ancestors were preoccupied with their day-to-day survival. That should make them anxious, right? At the same time, the lack of social mobility and technological change in medieval times offered a certain comforting predictability. Here's a paradox. It's much easier for us to survive now, but our anxiety levels keep growing. Today, the overwhelming abundance of choices and the need for constant adaptation to new roles and technologies fuel our anxiety. Somehow, the freedom we strive for played a joke on us. That is the paradox of choice. As the freedom to choose increases, so does our anxiety. A renowned neurobiologist, Robert Sapolsky, suggests that a more fluid and dynamic political system generates more anxiety than static ones. Indeed, anxiety became an integral aspect of the human condition, shaped by a complex combination of biological, social, and cultural factors. It's a part of us, individually and collectively. So, are we all doomed to feel anxious from birth? both by our genes and environment? Or is there a cure? Focus point 3. A struggle to define anxiety. Where do we even begin to define anxiety? To this day, there's no single correct answer to this question. Philosophers like Søren Kierkegaard view it as a spiritual and philosophical rather than a physical problem. It is where the Danish word angst comes from, a feeling of uneasiness with no direct cause. However, the author of evolutionary theory, Charles Darwin, had a different explanation. An incredibly anxious person himself, Darwin defined anxiety as an adaptive response humans experience while evolving. It first appeared in our ancestors as an automatic physical response to threats in their environment. Anxiety pushes humans to react to danger, thus improving our chances of survival. It acts as our biological alarm clock. Anxiety activates the fight or flight reaction, helping us flee from or face dangers. However, do we really feel anxious only based on a real threat to our lives? We can't say that in the 21st century. Modern anxiety is often pathological and disproportionate to the size of the danger. Our primitive evolutionary response is not well suited to modern civilization. Darwin is not the only one to propose a theory about anxiety. Today, there are 4 primary theoretical views and treatment approaches. 1. Psychoanalytic. Influenced by Freud, this perspective views anxiety as the result of repressed conflicts, often related to taboo thoughts. Therapy aims to bring these to consciousness and resolve them, seeking deep insights from the psyche. 2. Behaviorist. This school of thought sees anxiety as a conditioned fear response, where we learn to fear harmless situations. Treatment involves exposure therapy and cognitive restructuring to retrain the brain's response to fear. 3. Biomedical. This approach delves into the biological grounds of anxiety, examining brain structures and neurotransmitters. Medication addresses the biochemical aspects of anxiety. 4. Experiential. This view considers anxiety as a reaction to threats to self-esteem or psyche. Therapy focuses on relaxation techniques and exploring deep-seated existential concerns. Utterly lost among these approaches, Scott turned to his therapist for his conception of anxiety and its treatment. Drive W suggests that while these approaches differ, they often intersect in his practice. The root of anxiety is an existential crisis every human experiences when facing inevitable problems, loss, aging, and death. Thus, anxiety serves as a protective screen against having to face these challenges. This feeling offers a window into our deepest fears and desires as human beings. Focus point 4. Facing our fears. On top of his general sense of worry about anything and everything, Scott suffers from specific phobias. Emetophobia, a pathological fear of vomiting, is one of his most powerful ones. This fear has an overpowering, irrational grip on him. He has not vomited in over 35 years, yet this phobia occupies a significant portion of his daily thoughts. It creates a vicious feedback loop. Physical symptoms like stomach aches and bowel issues intensify his anxiety, which in turn worsens these physical symptoms. Fear sharpens the senses. Anxiety paralyzes them. Kurt Goldstein. His top 2 phobias go beyond his physical organs. An overwhelming social phobia. This condition concerns everything from public speaking to casual social interactions. Scott's writing career requires him to face the public, after all. His way of dealing with it is far from healthy. A mix of benzodiazepines and alcohol reduces his dread to manageable discomfort. If you experience an accelerated heart rate, shaking, and sweating when speaking publicly, you could have a social phobia. The concept of social anxiety disorder was non-existent before 1980, but current research estimates that it now affects millions of Americans. Public figures are not immune to these challenges either. Barbra Streisand avoided public performances for nearly 3 decades due to performance anxiety, and Hugh Grant relied on lorazepam to get through filming. Regardless of our status, we're all prone to social phobia, going to great lengths to manage our fears. Our bodies react faster than our brains can rationalize. This results from the quick social judging phenomenon built into us by evolution. Our ancestors subconsciously checked their attunement to social groups and norms. Their social behavior kept them from trouble and helped them stay alive. However, we misapply these instincts in our modern contexts, leading to ungrounded social phobias. However, there are few workplaces where managing anxieties and phobias is necessary. For example, militaries across history have acknowledged the power of dealing with anxiety. Warfare is a consistently high-stress environment where anxiety management directly impacts a soldier's professional success. While modern militaries undergo special training, substance use is a common way to suppress it. For example, Vikings used deer urine-based stimulants, while the British preferred rum to help them combat battlefield fear. Even the bravest of us are prone to feeling scared and falling apart in the face of danger. Focus point 5. Can pills save us? Scott was a nervous child, often suffering from panic attacks and surges of anxiety at home, school, and in the middle of sports sessions. By age 10, the feeling had become so all-consuming that he had stopped seeing his friends and rarely left the house. That's when his father started running to the drugstore for emergency doses of tranquilizers. Scott began to take them regularly with a form of antidepressants on top. Despite constantly feeling foggy and dehydrated, he finally had his anxiety under control. Ever since then, Scott has been on one sort of medication or another to help his condition. In one tough year, his therapist prescribed him Paxil, a then new form of an SSRI antidepressant. The change in his life was almost immediate. He woke up feeling energetic, was less tired during the day, stopped experiencing panic attacks, and even his phobias improved. It was like a dream come true until he took a plane. A short episode of turbulence caused a major flashback. Trembling hands, air sickness, and fear of crashing. Not long after, his anxiety levels rose again. Strong stimuli can break through even medication-adjusted brain chemistry to produce intense anxiety. Scott kept taking Paxil for another 6 years, yet it did not affect his condition. It was time to try something new. After stopping Paxil, he gave himself a little break before taking another antidepressant. The effects of withdrawal were more than Scott could take. He barely lasted a week and has never gone a day without taking an antidepressant since. When such medication entered the market, the health industry embraced it as a savior. Barbiturates and tranquilizers were an absolute hit in America. Drugs became a cultural phenomenon. From homemakers to movie stars, everyone was hooked. A cure for panic disorder entered the market, too. Xanax quickly became the biggest commercial success in the history of prescription drugs. But when has life ever been exempt from stress? Should there be a pill for every mood and occasion? The New York Academy of Medicine. Yet, if drugs work as a universal cure, why does humanity still suffer from these disorders? Antidepressants entered the market, but depression incidence has grown by 1,000% since. If medication is not the answer, what is? Did you know? Even Sigmund Freud heavily relied on medication to manage his anxiety and even prescribed cocaine to all of his patients as a magic drug. Focus point 6. Genes versus us. So, what causes us to be so anxious? Are we the hostages of our genes, or is our environment shaping us? Scott discovered an answer in his own story. He's been anxious as far as he remembers, but something new appeared at 6. Scott's separation anxiety, as well as his phobia of vomiting, set in and started spiraling. According to research, if a child develops a phobia at an early age, there's an 85% chance they will suffer from anxiety disorder as adults. That was the first sign of what was to come in Scott's life. For years, Scott lived in constant fear his parents would die or abandon him and that he wouldn't return home after work. His mother was not affectionate but overprotective of him, which only fueled his dependency and feeling unloved. A child's early relationship with their mother significantly affects them as adults. The first anxiety we experience as babies is about losing our mom's care and love. Depending on how our mothers react to us, we develop our attachment styles, as examined by psychologist John Bowlby. These styles, secure, ambivalent, and avoidant, significantly influence our adult relationships and anxiety levels. Children with secure attachments generally exhibit lower anxiety, greater self-esteem, and independence as adults than those with ambivalent or avoidant attachments. Analyzing our childhood attachments can help us understand our adult anxieties. Seeing how his parents' attitude affected him as a child, Scott took a different approach with his children. However, the gene factor didn't disappear. His children inevitably developed anxiety that paralleled his own. Scott's daughter acquired a vomiting phobia at almost the same age, while his son has the same separation anxiety. Both children exhibit a shy, neurotic temperament. 3 generations of his family share the same anxiety pattern despite growing up differently. Research shows that no single gene can make us anxious. However, genes make us susceptible to disorders, and our environment contributes to their development. 40 years later, Scott has learned to live with it and even sees value in his disorder. After all, such creative geniuses as Franz Kafka, Marcel Proust, and Woody Allen found that anxiety fueled their art. Anxiety can make people better workers if directed toward the right cause. Ultimately, anxious people can handle a lot and grow more resilient from their experience. Conclusion: Scott is not alone in his struggle. Anxiety disorders are on the rise globally. If you meet people suffering, remember that experiencing this feeling goes beyond simply worrying about your day-to-day issues. It is a condition deeply rooted in biology, psychology, and environment. While medications can offer temporary relief, they're not a panacea. Scott's experience reminds us that pills alone can't erase anxiety. Instead, we should all look harder at our deep-seated fears and where they come from. And with the right approach, anxiety can transform from a burden into a tool fueling our resilience and creativity. Try this. Seek professional help. If you experience intense anxiety symptoms, don't hesitate to consult a mental health professional. Explore additional options. If you take medication for a mental health condition, consider complementary therapies and mindfulness practices. Revisit childhood experiences. Reflect on your past to uncover potential anxiety triggers. Embrace anxiety. Accept anxiety as a part of you and channel it into creative and constructive paths. As we conclude this journey, remember that language is magical. It connects us, bridges cultural divides, and allows us to express our deepest feelings. Let's cherish the beauty and power of language and continue to explore new audiobooks, uncovering new insights and forging meaningful connections. Stay tuned and keep on exploring knowledge on our channel Media Deem. Folks, it's the key to a world of wonder and wisdom. Keep listening and incorporating the knowledge into your conversations. The more you listen, the better you speak.